Daf Yomi, Tractate Menachos, 64b. At the Mishnah, top of the page, the Mishnah, one line into it. Mitzvahs ha'oimer, l'hovi min ha'korov, v'lo bikir ha'korov l'Yerushalayim. V'yin oisem l'chol makom. Maaseh sheba ha'oimer, miganos, serifin, u'shtei lechem l'bikas, ein soichel. That's the whole Mishnah. The mitzvah of the Omer is to bring the barley reaped for the meal offering from fields proximate to Jerusalem. If the barley did not ripen in the fields proximate to Jerusalem, one brings it from any place in Eretz Yisrael. There was an incident where the Omer came from Gagot Serifin, and the wheat for the 2 loaves on Shavuot came from the valley of Ein Sofer. Okay, that's the Mishnah, and now we go to the Talmud. The Talmud. My time. The Gemara asks, what is the reason that the barley reaped for the Omer meal offering should ideally be brought from fields proximate to Jerusalem? The Gemara answers, if you wish, say. It's interesting. Why does it say Iboyes Ema right away? Iboyes Ema, if you want to say. It usually says Iboyes Ema. Is like, it's unusual. If you wish, say, Iboyes Ema means you can say alternatively. If you wish, you could say, it's not like the first thing. Now they're saying the first thing is Iboyes Ema. It's unusual, I think. The Gemara answers, if you wish, say that it is because the verse states, and if you bring a meal offering of the first fruits to the Lord, you shall bring for the meal offering of your first fruits grain in the ear parched with fire, even groats of the fresh ear. That's Carmel. Leviticus 2:14. This indicates that the grain should be soft and fresh. Consequently, it should be brought from close by, not from a place where it might become stale and hardened during a long journey. And if you wish, you could say instead, the reason is due to the principle that one does not postpone performance of the mitzvot. When presented with the opportunity to perform a mitzvah, one should perform it immediately. Therefore, the barley for the mitzvah of the Omer meal offering in the temple should be brought from the first crop encountered outside of Jerusalem. Maaseh sheba ha'omer migagois tzerifin tanu rabbanon כשצורו מלכי בית חשמונאי זה על זה והיה הורקנוס מבחוץ ואריסטובלוס מבפנים בכל יום ויום היו משלשים להן דינורין בקופה ומעלין להם תמידין. The Mishnah teaches there was an incident where the Omer came from Gagot Serifin and the 2 loaves on Shavuot came from the valley of Ein Socher. The sages taught a braita that provides the background of this event. When the kings of the Hasmonean monarchy besieged each other in their civil war, I didn't know the Hasmoneans had a civil war. Wow, interesting. Okay, when the kings of the Hasmonean monarchy besieged each other in their civil war, Hyrcanus was outside of Jerusalem besieging it, and Aristobulus was inside. On each and every day, they would lower dinars in a box from inside the city, and those on the outside would send up animals for them to bring the daily offerings in the temple. Wasn't this happening the same thing to the Romans? Okay, anyway. A certain elderly man was there in Jerusalem who was familiar with Greek wisdom. I'll just read the whole thing so we can get the story clear in one shot. כל זמן שעסוקים בעבודה אין נמסורים מידכם למחר שלשלו להן דינורין מקופה והלו להן חזיר. כיוון שהגיע לחצי חומה נעץ ציפורניו בחומה ונזדעזה ארץ ישראל 400 פרסו Al Alba Miris Palsa. I don't want to say like I could swear, I could promise, but I don't want to say like that. But I'm sure that I've seen this. I mean, this looks so familiar with the Romans. Okay, I'll read the whole story. There was an incident. Okay, apparently now there was a Hasmonean civil war, and Hyrcanus was besieging it, and Aristobulus was inside. I guess those are the two factions within the Hasmonean monarchy that were at odds with each other. And on each and every day, they would lower dinars in a box in the city, and they would send up animals. I don't know who they were buying it from or whatever. But then a certain elderly man was there in Jerusalem who was familiar with the Greek wisdom. He communicated to those on the outside by using words understood only by those proficient in Greek wisdom. The elderly man said to them, "As long as they are engaged with the temple service, they will not be delivered into your hands." Upon hearing this, on the following day, when they lowered dinars in the box, they sent up a pig to them. Once the pig reached halfway to the wall, it inserted its hooves into the wall, and Eretz Yisrael shuddered 400 parasangs by 400 parasangs. When the sages saw this, they said at that time, "Cursed is he who raises pigs, and cursed is he who teaches his son Greek wisdom." And it is with regard to that time of civil war in which the land was destroyed that we learned an incident occurred in which the omer, the measure of barley, brought as a communal offering on the 16th of Nisan, came from Gagot Serifim, and the 2 loaves offered on Shavuot came from the valley of Ein Sofer, since no fresh barley grain was found in the fields immediately surrounding Jerusalem. It had to be brought from these outlying areas. Ki mata omer lo avu yede mehecha eisi omer achruzo asahu charasha oseh chada yede igara yichad yede atzirifa amar lehu Mordechai. Mordechai? I guess so. Mi iga duchta ishmei ganos tzirifin o tzirifin gagos badaku vashkachu. The Gemara relates another tradition with regard to that occasion when the Omer came from Gagot Serifin and the 2 loaves from the valley of Ein Socher. When it came time to bring the Omer meal offering, they did not know from where they could bring the Omer grain, as all the surrounding fields were looted and ruined. The court publicly proclaimed their difficulty. A certain deaf mute came forward and stretched out one hand toward the roof, the Gog in Hebrew, and one hand toward a hut. Mordechai said to the sages, "Is there a place that is called Gagot Serifin, or Serifin Gagot?" They checked and found that there was such a place, and it contained fields of barley from which they were able to bring the Omer meal offering. Asahu gavra charasha, ois videino, v'chod yidei asichro, amanu Mordechai, umi ikaduchta dishmei ein socher, o socher ein, badku vashkachu. A similar instance occurred when they needed to bring 2 loaves, and they did not know from where to bring the grain. Again, the court publicly proclaimed their difficulty, and a certain deaf mute came forward and stretched out one hand toward his eye and one hand toward a door latch. Mordechai said to the sages, "And is there a place that is called Ein Socher or Socher Ayin?" They checked and found there was such a place, and it contained fields of wheat from which they were able to bring the 2 loaves. Hanu shalosh nashim daisu shalosh kinin chadam ra rezivosi chadam ali yamasi chadam amrala onasi. The Gemara relates another story that demonstrates Mordechai's wisdom. Once there a certain three women brought three nests for their obligatory offerings of pairs of pigeons or doves, Leviticus 15:29. One of them said, "This offering is for my ziva," and one said, "This is for my yama," and the last one said, "This is for my ona." Savur mina zivasi zavamamish. Liamasi mamash. Anasi loinasa dekulahada chatas v'chada oina. Okay. The sages understood from the first woman's statement, my ziva, that she experienced a discharge of uterine blood when not experiencing her menstrual period, which would give her the status of an actual zava. From the second woman statement, for my yama, they understood my actual yama means she was also a ziva, as yam can mean a sea or a flow of blood. From the third woman's statement, for my ona, they came to the conclusion that she needed to bring a sacrifice for her time, her ona, of completing her purification process of being a zava. Accordingly, they understood that all these women were obligated to bring one sin offering and one burnt offering. Amar Lahu Mordechai, Shema Bezov Sikna, Shema Beyam Sikna, Shema Be'ena Sikna, Dechulu Oilois Ninu Beduk Ashkuch. Mordechai said to the other sages, perhaps the first woman was endangered in the course of her menstrual flow. Similarly, perhaps the second woman was endangered at sea. Yam. Finally, perhaps the third was endangered through her eye, as ayin phonetically similar to ona. According to these explanations, each woman sought to bring a voluntary offering to give thanks to God for being saved from danger. If so, the appropriate offering in each case is not a sin offering, as they are all burnt offerings. It was checked out, and they found that Mordechai's interpretation was in fact correct.